Put your hands where I can see them. Step away from the boy. The command cracked through the warm Atlanta evening, sharp as breaking glass. Michael Carter froze beside his SUV, palms rising slowly, breath steadying against the hammer of sirens and the nervous rustle of a small crowd. Beside the rear bumper, his 9-year-old son Evan, freckled, pale, lip trembling, clutched his helmet to his chest as if it were a shield. A police cruiser angled across the parking lot lane, blue and red lights strobing against the bank's mirrored facade. Another unit rolled up along the curb, tires whispering over fallen oak leaves, officers spilling out with methodical economy. The smell of hot asphalt and distant fried chicken hung in the air. Michael's voice came calm and low. "Officer, my adoption papers are in the driver's door. Please let me show you." "Don't move," the nearest officer said, one gloved hand hovering near his holster, the other slicing the distance like a metronome. Behind him, the woman who'd called 911 stood squared to the scene, phone still in her fist. Michael recognized the set of her jaw, the neat blouse, the clipped efficiency. Karen Blake, from the bank window an hour ago, now flushed with a righteousness that looked a lot like fear. "I saw him haul that boy toward the car," she announced to the officers as if delivering a report. "He bought 2 bikes and started pushing the kid into this vehicle. That's my dad." Evan's voice cracked, thin and earnest in the hum of onlookers. "Please don't hurt him." A hush fell in the beat that followed, not silence exactly, but the way sound gathers its weight before it drops. Michael kept his eyes on the officer's chest cam. Not the weapon, not the woman, not the shadows moving in his peripheral vision, where curiosity and judgment breathe the same air. "Stay calm. Breathe. Let the facts do the talking." Scout broke the tension first. The big golden retriever yanked free from Evan's loose grip and trotted straight to Michael, tail sweeping the air, tongue lolling in a puppy grin as if this were a game of freeze tag. He pressed his head to Michael's thigh, that familiar lean, the casual authority of a dog sure of his family. A few people laughed in short, surprised bursts that died quickly under the lights. Evan hiccuped a sob. "See? He's ours. He's my dog." "Sir," the officer repeated. "Quieter now. Do not reach for anything." "I won't," Michael said. And he didn't. He just stood there, hands up, Scout's warm weight against him, the rest of him inventorying 100 minor details that would matter later. The sharp scent of tire rubber, the faces at the edge of things, the metallic clink from behind a dark SUV 3 rows over where someone ducked out of sight. He lifted his chin toward the door pocket. Driver's side. "There's a folder: adoption decree, amended birth certificate, photos, too." "Let me guess." Karen's tone sliced sideways. "Forged, like that Stanford degree." She took a step closer to the officers, not to Michael. "I told you, I watched him at the bank. Big cash deposit. A story that didn't add up. He left with 2 bikes and a white child, for heaven's sake." Michael swallowed the heat that climbed his throat. "Not here. Not now. Evan first." He shifted his weight so Scout blocked Evan from the holstered gun that wasn't pointed but didn't have to be. "Buddy," he said, pitching his voice the way you do when the room is full of breakable things. "Stand by the front tire and keep your hands on the hood. You're okay." Evan nodded and inched forward, the helmet still clutched to his chest, Braves cap askew beneath it, cheeks bright with streaks he tried to rub away with the back of his hand. The officer nearest Michael flicked a glance to his partner. "I'll check the door." He moved slow, a measured arc that kept the SUV, the man, and the boy all within line of sight. The handle clicked, the door swung wide with a soft sigh. Paper ruffled. "Folders here," he called out. A second officer angled his body to keep Karen and the small crowd at a polite distance. "Ma'am, please stand back. You're making a mistake," she said, but the force had gone out of it. Her eyes darted from Scout's swishing tail to Evan's pale knuckles and back to Michael's open hands, as if the human geometry of the scene had shifted in a way she hadn't prepared for. A gust of late sunlight slid along the SUV's quarter panel, bright as a blade. Michael felt it warm the skin of his raised forearms. He let the world take in the picture: no sudden movement, no talking past the wind. Just a father on a Tuesday, and a boy, and a dog, and a woman certain of the worst thing she could imagine. The officer at the door angled the folder toward the light and thumbed through. Paper whispered like a congregation turning the same page. "State court seal," he said. "Adoption decree. Names Carter. Photo IDs match." He looked up at Michael, then at Evan. "Son, what's your name?" "Evan Michael Carter," the boy said through a breath he was only half holding. "He's my dad." Karen's lips parted, closed, parted again, words stalling like a car at a yellow light. "You can fake a photo ID," she tried. Folks do it every day. You can't fake this seal, the officer said without heat. He handed the folder to his partner, who ran a practiced eye over the embossed gold and the signatures with date stamps that told their own chronology. The radio at his shoulder crackled unit identifiers, a murmur of dispatch, static like rain. In that fragile pause, Scout's head came up, ears pricked. He gave a low, unmistakable growl and pivoted toward the row of cars where the dark SUV had blocked a sightline. Michael didn't turn his head. He'd already noted the glint of something in that shadow, the silhouette of a knee that didn't belong to a bystander. The growl sharpened, rolled into a bark. A shape flinched. Metal clinked again, and a boy 16, maybe bolted from behind the SUV. A length of bolt cutters catching the light as he stumbled, then sprinted. "Hey!" someone shouted. Two officers reacted in the same breath, one pivoted after the movement. The other stepped instinctively between Evan and the noise. "Drop it!" But the kid's hand had already gone slack, the cutters tumbling to the pavement with a slap that felt final. Scout lunged, bounded 2 steps, then checked himself at Michael's quiet whistle. "Stay," Michael said, and the dog did, quivering with the effort. The young officer at the door pocket lifted his chin. "Unit 3 has the juvenile," came a voice from the radio. "He matches the description from last week's bike theft outside Pine Street Cycles." Karen flinched like she'd been slapped by the wind. "That's not I mean. I didn't. I saw what I saw." Michael lowered his hands by degrees, slow enough that nobody twitched. His voice stayed soft. "Sometimes we all do." He looked at the nearest officer. "May I put my hands down?" "Yes, sir," the officer said, and it was sir now, not "hey you" or "step away." Michael let his arms drift to his sides. His shoulders ached. He hadn't noticed until he did. He glanced at Evan, at the scuffed toes of his boy's sneakers, at the knot in the laces he'd tied too fast in the rush to make pickup after practice. "You okay, pal?" "Yeah," Evan said, and made it true by saying it. Scout nosed the boy's elbow until it loosened. The cutters lay on the ground between the SUV and a chalky white sedan with a dented bumper. They looked like an exclamation point someone had dropped in the middle of a sentence. Then walked away from. "Mr. Carter," the officer with the folder said, clearing his throat as if he could reorder the whole afternoon by swallowing once. "I apologize for the escalation. We had a call about a possible abduction. We have to respond." "I'm glad you did," Michael said, and meant it. "I want you to respond. I just want everyone to see clearly while they do." He let his gaze land gently on Karen. It wasn't a stare down. It was a question he didn't ask out loud. "What part of me did you decide on when you decided?" She looked anywhere but at him. The crowd thinned in that way crowds do when there's no spectacle left in it for them, people realizing they had groceries sweating in their trunks, dogs who needed walking, children asking what was for dinner. The bank's mirrored facade no longer threw their reflections back in fragments. It just stood there reflecting sky. Evan slid his helmet under his arm and stepped closer to Michael until Scout's fur tickled both their knees. "Can we go home?" he asked. Michael heard the wobble in it. He knelt slowly, put one palm on Scout's collar, the other on his son's shoulder. "Yeah," he said. "We're going home." He rose and looked at the officer. "May I put the folder back in the door?" "I'll do it," the officer said, and tucked the papers exactly where Michael had said they'd be. He shut the door with a soft click that sounded like the end of something small but stubborn. Karen took a step forward then, a step too late. She began, and stopped. There was no script now, just silence and the fragile labor of a woman trying to lift the weight of a certainty she'd mistaken for truth. "I hope the boy enjoys his bike," she said finally, and it was almost kind until you remembered the rest. "He will," Michael said, and left it there. Because not everything needs to be answered in public. He reached for Evan's hand, checked Scout's leash, and felt the steadying tug of both. As he slid behind the wheel he thought brief. Unbidden of the bank's air conditioning on his damp shirt earlier. The way Karen had held his ID up to the fluorescent light like a counterfeit bill. The way she hadn't picked up the phone when he'd offered her the number to call. Balance, he told himself, steering the SUV toward the exit. Not thin-skinned, not hard-hearted. Balance. The cruiser eased back, giving him room. He rolled past the officers with a nod. "Thank you." He set out the open window. Because gratitude does not diminish a man, it confirms him. "Drive safe, sir," the officer replied. Michael pulled onto the street. The sun had shifted lower, washing the brick facades in a copper rinse. Evan leaned back, helmet in his lap, Scout's head wedged between them on the console, breath warm and dog-sweet. "Dad," Evan said. "Yeah? Why did she think you weren't my dad?" Michael watched the lane lines blur into a clean white ribbon and felt the answer gather like weather far off, coming steady. Not yet, he thought. Not with the blue of the evening this gentle. Sometimes, he said, picking his words the way you pick a path through a room full of sleeping children, people believe the first thing they see instead of the truest thing in front of them. He squeezed his son's hand once and held on. But the truest thing, he added, always holds. Evan was quiet for a long block, then two. Can we get ice cream? He asked. Because this is how children pull the world back into a shape they can trust. Michael smiled despite the ache between his shoulder blades. Yeah, buddy. Ice cream sounds about right. And the city slid by, unbroken and ordinary, as the lights behind them dimmed and the evening caught its breath. 1 hour earlier, the clock on the bank wall had read, its second hand sweeping lazy circles above a line of clients waiting for the weekday noon rush to fade. Michael Carter stood near the counter, gym bag still slung across one shoulder, damp from the morning run, gray t-shirt clinging to him like proof he hadn't dressed for meetings. He'd meant to be in and out, deposit a donation check for the Carter Foundation, pick up Evan's new bike, make it to practice on time. But the teller's expression, polished with polite skepticism, told him this would not be quick. Next, said the woman in the glass cubicle. Her name tag read Karen Blake. She smiled the way someone smiles when they've already decided how a story ends. Michael stepped forward, setting the check and his ID on the counter. Afternoon, Miss Blake. I'd like to deposit these into our foundation account. Karen lifted the check, eyes narrowing at the zeros. That's quite a sum, Mr. Carter. Business or personal? Charitable, he said. For a youth program, bikes for underprivileged kids. You can confirm the account. She tapped at her keyboard, nails clicking like small hammers. And where did you say you work? Carter Finance Group. Her gaze slid to his wrist, the rubber gym band instead of a watch. We usually see your company's CFO, not you. He's on vacation. He smiled, unbothered. Figured I could handle a deposit myself. She examined the ID. Stanford University, huh? That's impressive. She tilted it toward the overhead light. You don't look like someone who went to Stanford. He let out a slow breath. What does someone who went to Stanford look like? You know what I mean, she said quickly, though she didn't. The silence that followed stretched thin. Behind him, a printer hummed. Somewhere, a child laughed. Michael thought about the years that had led to this very moment, the scholarships. The nights coding on borrowed laptops. The first check that hadn't bounced. He thought about how easily a smile could turn into suspicion depending on who wore it. Would you like to call my office? He asked evenly. The number's on the back. That won't be necessary. She stamped the check once, twice, a little harder than required. Processing may take a few hours. Sure, he said. Appreciate it. He gathered his ID, the faint scent of printer ink clinging to the air. As he turned away, he caught his reflection in the glass, tall, dark skin glinting under fluorescence. A man who'd built something and still, somehow, had to prove it every day. Outside, Atlanta's late autumn sun hit like a blessing. He crossed to his SUV. The city moving in a rhythm that was part gospel, part grind. Horns, laughter. The scent of roasted nuts from a food cart. Scout's head popped up in the back seat, tail thumping. Hey, boy, Michael said, sliding behind the wheel. He started the engine, the dashboard clock blinking 1:07 p.m. Let's get your kid's bike. Traffic rolled by in fits and starts, murals flashing color across brick walls, heroes, angels, basketball legends. He turned down Pine Street toward the cycle shop, where the owner, a gray-haired man named Bill, waved from the doorway. You're early, Mike. Got that blue Raleigh all tuned up. Appreciate it, Michael said, stepping out. Evan's been talking about this thing all week. Good kid, that one, Bill said. You said it's a gift? For his friend, actually. Kid's family can't afford a replacement. His old bike got stolen outside school. Bill whistled softly. That's mighty kind of you. Just paying it forward. Michael signed the receipt, loaded the new bike next to Evan's smaller one, secured both with bungee cords. Scout sniffed each tire, tail wagging approval. We done, pal? The dog barked once, short and sure. Michael checked his phone, missed call from the office, a text from Evan's coach reminding him about practice. He typed back. On our way soon. The drive from Pine Street wound through neighborhoods in quiet transition. Old houses with fresh paint, new condos sprouting where corner stores once stood. A memory slipped through, uninvited. The first time he'd brought Evan home, a bundle of nerves and blue eyes, the social worker's hesitant smile when she'd seen the pairing. "Are you sure?" she'd asked. He'd laughed then, the sound half defiance, half prayer. "I'm sure." Scout shifted on the seat, head nudging his arm. "Yeah. I know," Michael murmured. "Keep calm. Always." He thought again of Karen's face, how quickly politeness had hardened into doubt, and told himself it didn't matter. People would see what they were ready to see. Still, something about her tone lingered like static. As he turned into the grocery lot to grab sandwiches for the afternoon, he noticed a group of teenagers loitering near the bike racks, one of them flicking a lighter open and shut. Scout's ears perked. Michael parked 2 rows away, eyes scanning the mirrors. One boy peeled off from the group, hoodie up despite the mild weather, gaze darting to the back of Michael's SUV. Michael stepped out, calm but alert. "Can I help you?" The kid froze, then shrugged. "Just looking." "You into bikes?" "Sometimes." The boy's eyes slid to the shiny new Raleigh. "That one's sweet." "It's for a 9-year-old," Michael said, tone easy. "Doesn't ride fast, but it rides right." The boy muttered something and drifted off. Scout gave a low rumble in his chest until the group disappeared around the corner. "Good eye," Michael said, patting his head. He grabbed 2 sandwiches and a chocolate milk for Evan. By the time he reached the register, his phone buzzed again, unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Carter?" A clipped voice said. "This is World City Bank. I'm calling to inform you your recent deposit has been flagged for verification." "Flagged? Why?" "Just routine." A pause, then the faint click of another person joining the line. "Miss Blake requested additional confirmation." He felt the sigh in his ribs. "That's fine," he said. "Tell her to call our office. Everything's documented." "We'll do that." The line went dead. He stood for a moment under the store's neon sign, the bag warm in his hand, the city humming its indifferent rhythm. Routine. He'd heard the word before, each time it carried a different weight. He loaded the groceries beside the bikes, checked the cords again, and turned toward the exit. The air had shifted, he could smell rain somewhere beyond the freeway. Scout leaned his head out the window, tongue catching the breeze. Michael smiled despite the tiredness creeping at the edge of his patience. "You don't know how lucky you are, boy," he said. "Nobody ever asks you for ID." The dog barked once, as if agreeing. A few blocks later, the first drops began to fall, fat and warm against the windshield. He took a shortcut through the open lot behind the strip mall, gravel crunching under the tires. The place was half empty, an old car wash, a pawn shop, the back wall of the bank looming like a gray sentinel. He parked to answer a text, unaware that across the street, Karen Blake was finishing her shift. She stepped out the side door with her purse clutched tight, spotted the SUV with the 2 bikes and the dark figure loading bags inside, and felt a flare of vindication sharpen her spine. "I knew it," she whispered, thumb already sliding over her phone screen. At the same moment, inside the car, Michael reached for the radio, humming along to a Motown track Evan loved. The rain quickened, blurring the edges of everything. Scout shifted, restless, catching a scent from somewhere unseen. Michael glanced around, uneasy without knowing why. A crack of thunder rolled low across the city, and the dog whined. "It's just thunder, buddy." But even as he said it, a darker sound threaded through the distant rise of sirens, faint at first, then closing in. He frowned, checked the mirror. 2 patrol cars sped past the intersection, lights reflecting in puddles. Probably nothing, he told himself. Maybe a fender bender on Peachtree. He put the SUV in gear, pulling out slowly. The phone on the passenger seat lit up. Unknown caller. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Carter?" The voice was official this time, male, trained flat. "This is Officer Daniels with APD. Are you currently driving a silver SUV, license ending in 472? Michael's pulse skipped. "Yes." "What's this about?" "We've received a report of a possible abduction involving your vehicle. We need you to pull over and remain where you are." For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the rhythmic swish of wipers, the steady pant of Scout, the quiet rustle of rain. "Abduction?" he echoed. "There's been a mistake." But mistakes, he knew, had momentum. Once they started rolling, they didn't stop until someone put themselves in their path. He looked at Scout, at the 2 bikes in the back, at the sandwich bag with Evan's name scribbled across it, and felt the chill slide beneath his skin. "All right," he said finally, calm finding him like an old friend. "I'll wait right here." Outside, the sirens grew louder. The rain kept falling, relentless and ordinary, washing the city clean for the next misunderstanding to bloom. Rain had already slicked the asphalt into a mirror when the first patrol car swung into the grocery lot. Michael saw the flash of blue and red in his side mirror, steady and absolute, and felt that quiet tightening in his chest, the space where anger wanted to live but discipline had already moved in. He eased the SUV toward an open lane, hazard lights blinking, hands visible on the wheel. Scout barked once, low and uncertain. "Easy boy," Michael said softly, eyes on the rear view. "They just need to talk." In the back seat, the two bikes glistened with raindrops, one brand new, one small and worn with Evan's stickers still on the frame. It looked almost absurd, the picture of innocence framed by sirens. A second cruiser arrived, blocking the exit. The radio on the dash crackled with static. Michael killed the engine, letting the quiet hum of the rain fill the void. He remembered the officer's voice from the phone call, polite, careful, impersonal. A possible abduction. The words hung there, absurd and heavy. He took a slow breath. The door of the nearest cruiser opened, and a young officer stepped out, rain spattering off his cap. Another followed, older, the posture of command in his shoulders. They moved in practiced rhythm, hands near belts, eyes measuring. "Sir, please step out of the vehicle," the older one said. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Michael did exactly that. Palms open to the gray sky. "My name's Michael Carter," he said. "There's been a misunderstanding." "We'll clear that up," the officer replied, neutral as procedure required. "For now, step away from the door." From the corner of his eye, Michael caught movement, a woman standing just beyond the taped-off bank entrance. Umbrella tilted against the rain. Karen Blake. She was talking quickly to a third officer, pointing in his direction, face taut with certainty. The scene folded in on itself. The sirens, the woman, the rain, familiar ingredients for a story that never ended the same way twice. Scout barked again, louder this time, pressing his nose to the window as if sensing the heat of tension outside. The older officer glanced toward the sound. "Is there someone else in the vehicle, sir?" "My dog," Michael said. "Golden retriever. He's friendly." "Anyone else?" "No one. Just me." The officer nodded once. "Do you mind telling me what's in the back?" "Two bikes. Bought them at Pine Street Cycles an hour ago." "Whose are they?" "One's my son's, the other's for his friend." The younger officer walked around to the rear, flashlight cutting through the drizzle, sweeping over the frames. "They matched the report," he said quietly to his partner. "Two children's bikes. One new, one used." The older man's jaw tightened. "Sir, you said they belonged to your son. Where is he now?" Michael hesitated just long enough to feel the weight of it. "Home," he said. "With his babysitter. You can call him if you'd like." The officer scribbled in a small notebook, rain dotting the page. "We will." Behind them, Karen's voice cut through the patter. "He's lying. I saw him with a child. Blonde hair, white kid, maybe 9 or 10. He shoved him into that car." Michael turned his head slowly toward her, not defiant, just tired. "That was my son," he said. But the words were for the rain, not for her. The young officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we'll handle it," he said over his shoulder. But she kept talking, words tumbling faster now that someone was finally listening. "You don't understand. I know what I saw." Michael remembered the look she'd given him inside the bank, the way her smile had curled when she'd said, "You don't look like someone who went to Stanford." That same conviction burned now, dressed as civic duty. The older officer gestured toward the passenger seat. "Sir, we'll need to see your identification again." Michael reached slowly for the wallet on the console, every movement deliberate. "There's also a folder in the driver's door," he said. "Adoption papers. It has my son's name, Evan Michael Carter. There's a court seal." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "Stay where you are. I'll get it." Michael watched him open the door, water dripping from his sleeve as he pulled the folder free. Papers rustled, the faint gold glint of the embossed seal catching a drop of light. "Everything you need should be there," Michael said. "Birth certificate, photos, signatures." The younger officer moved to block Karen's approach. "Ma'am, please stand back." She bristled but obeyed, muttering something about forged documents. Rain streaked her umbrella like veins. The senior officer scanned the pages, his brow furrowing. "These look legitimate," he said quietly. Then, louder. "Dispatch. Confirm the name, Carter Finance Group owner Michael Carter. Residence Glenwood Avenue." "Copy?" The radio squawked back after a pause. "Confirmed. Registered business entity. Clean record." For a heartbeat, the world steadied. Then a noise cracked through the metallic clatter of something dropping, followed by a bark that was all instinct. Scout had leapt from the open rear window, sprinting toward the edge of the lot where a shadow moved between parked cars. "Scout!" Michael shouted, but the dog was already there, teeth clamped gently around the leg of a startled teenager. The boy froze, bolt cutters slipping from his grip. One of the officers reacted first, closing the distance in 3 strides. "Hands where I can see them." The boy stammered. I was just stealing." The officer finished, kicking the cutters aside. "You were stealing." The teenager's hoodie clung to his face, rain dripping from his chin. "I swear I wasn't. We'll sort it out at the station." The officer signaled for backup, and 2 more uniforms materialized as if summoned by guilt itself. Karen stood rooted, eyes darting between the boy and Michael, her narrative dissolving under the weight of reality. "That can't be him," she whispered. "I saw." "You saw what you expected to see," Michael said quietly. The older officer gave a small nod, the kind that admitted more than it said. "Mr. Carter, you're free to go," he said. "And thank you for your patience." Michael exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Scout trotted back, fur dripping, tail wagging as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. The officers loaded the teenager into the cruiser, bolt cutters clanging once more as evidence. Rain softened to a mist. Karen took a hesitant step toward Michael. I just wanted to protect that child," she said, voice small now. "We all want to protect children," he replied, not unkindly. "But first, we have to learn to see them clearly." She looked away, lips trembling. The moral certainty that had carried her here slipping into something that looked a lot like shame. The officers wrapped up their reports, lights dimming. The older one handed Michael his papers. "Sorry for the inconvenience, sir." "You were doing your job," Michael said. "Just do it carefully." He whistled for Scout, opened the door, and climbed in. The seats were damp where the dog had shaken himself off. He glanced at the clock, 2:38 p.m. Evan would be wondering where he was. "Let's go home," he murmured. As he pulled out of the lot, Karen still stood under her umbrella, watching the cruiser that carried the real thief away. Her face was unreadable in the red-blue flash that faded with distance. The city resumed its rhythm. Cars honking, rain whispering through gutters. A neon sign flickering open again as if nothing had happened. Michael merged into traffic, the wipers squeaking with each pass. His phone buzzed on the console. Evan's babysitter checking in. "All good here." Evan finishing homework. Relief settled somewhere behind his ribs. "See, boy?" he said to Scout. "No harm done." The dog sighed and rested his head on Michael's knee. Outside the window, Atlanta stretched wide and indifferent, a city built on second chances and unlearned lessons. The radio played softly an old soul track about truth and love surviving the storm. He drove past the bank, its glass walls reflecting the washed-out sky, and for a fleeting second saw his own reflection merge with it. A man steady, tired, and still standing. He didn't wave. He didn't need to. Somewhere behind that glass, a woman was realizing how heavy a simple mistake could be. And somewhere ahead, a boy waited for his father to bring home dinner and a story that, for once, would end with everyone making it home safe. By the time Michael pulled into the driveway, the rain had thinned to a light mist that beaded across the hood like tiny questions. He sat for a moment with the engine idling, Scout's breath fogging the window, the echo of sirens still somewhere behind his ribs. The porch light was already on, its glow spilling across the steps in a soft amber fan. Inside, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the steady tick of the kitchen clock, and the scent of something familiar, Evan's favorite mac and cheese, reheated by the babysitter, waited like an anchor to normalcy. "You stay put," he told Scout gently, then stepped out, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. The quiet of home wrapped around him, but it didn't settle. Not yet. He found himself glancing back down the street, half expecting another patrol car to appear, though he knew it wouldn't. The night should have ended there, but storms, even the small ones, leave things behind. Evan came running when he opened the door, his socks sliding on the hardwood. "Dad." He crashed into Michael's legs, nearly knocking him backward. "You're late. Scout didn't eat until I told him you were okay." Michael laughed softly and crouched to hug him. "I'm okay, bud. Just took a little longer at the store." "You forgot my chocolate milk." "Did I?" He reached into the grocery bag and pulled it out. "Still cold." "Never doubt your old man." Evan grinned, the world already repaired in his eyes. For a while, that was enough, the warmth, the routine, the sound of cartoons flickering from the living room. But later, After tucking Evan into bed and listening to Scout's steady breathing at his feet, Michael sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, replaying the day in fragments. The rain, slick parking lot, the fear in the officer's eyes, the certainty in Karen's voice. He opened his laptop, pulling up a folder labeled Carter Foundation Projects. The bike registry initiative glowed on the screen, the first draft of an idea he'd floated months ago: serial number tracking, community volunteers, kids learning responsibility through ownership. Maybe, he thought, it was time to make it real. He began typing an email to Bill from Pine Street Cycles, outlining the plan, but stopped midway. His fingers hovered over the keys. What good was another project if people refused to see each other as human first? His reflection stared back from the black edge of the monitor, tired, thoughtful, still angry beneath the composure. He heard his mother's voice from years ago, after his first encounter with a teacher who'd accused him of cheating because his essay was too well written. Don't let bitterness be the thing they remember about you, Michael. Let it be your dignity. Dignity, he thought, was a quiet thing. It didn't shout. It endured. The phone buzzed then, jarring him from the thought. Unknown number again. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Carter? The voice was low, uncertain. This is Officer Daniels. I was at the scene earlier. Yes, officer. I just wanted to say. We reviewed the footage from the bank's exterior cameras. It confirms what you said. There was no child in danger. The kid we arrested had been scouting the lot all afternoon. We also saw Miss Blake giving her statement. I appreciate the call, Michael said evenly. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Daniels said. You handled yourself with more calm than I think I could have managed. Calm's cheaper than bail, Michael said, almost smiling. Take care of yourself, officer. You too, sir. The line went dead. Michael set the phone down, exhaled. Outside, the mist had thickened again into a curtain of soft rain. He stood, crossed to the window, and watched it gather along the gutter, listening to the way it softened the world. Scout padded over, pressing his nose against Michael's knee. Yeah. I know. He murmured. It's done. But deep down he knew it wasn't. Not really. The next morning brought sunlight and the smell of damp earth. Saturday. He drove Evan to his baseball practice at the local park. The fields glistening from the night's rain. Parents clustered along the chain-link fence, coffee cups in hand, faces familiar in their small-town way. He felt their eyes linger a beat too long, maybe from curiosity. Maybe because news traveled fast. Atlanta had a way of shrinking the distance between gossip and truth. Bill from the bike shop waved from across the lot. Mike. Saw you on the news last night. News? Michael frowned. What news? Some local segment. They didn't use your name, but everyone knew. Bank employee's false report leads to wrongful stop. Whole thing. He sighed. So much for quiet. Bill shook his head. Folks'll see through it. You handled it right. That's what people remember. Michael wanted to believe that. Still, as he watched Evan swing the bat awkward but determined, he felt the weight of eyes again, invisible but constant. He left early, taking Scout for a walk through the nearby trail. The forest smelled of pine and wet leaves, each step muffled by the earth. His thoughts drifted: justice, forgiveness, the strange intimacy of being misjudged. He found a stick and threw it. Scout bounded ahead, tail flashing gold through the sunlight. For a moment, peace returned. When his phone buzzed again, he almost didn't check it. The screen read, World City Bank Manager's Office. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Carter? This is Samuel Ortiz, Regional Manager. I'd like to extend a personal apology for what happened yesterday. Miss Blake has been placed on administrative leave pending review. You don't have to apologize for her, Michael said, keeping his tone measured. She made her own choice. Still, it reflects on us. I was hoping you might meet with me next week to discuss potential community outreach. Maybe turn this incident into something constructive. Michael leaned against the park bench, squinting toward the sundae. You want a PR fix? I want progress. Ortiz said carefully. The city's watching, and so are we. I'll think about it, Michael said. Send me the details. After hanging up, he stood for a while, feeling the day warm around him. The easy option would have been anger, lawsuits, headlines. But something quieter tugged at him, a chance to make the lesson mean more than a single apology. Scout returned with the stick, tail wagging, ready again. You never quit, do you? Michael tossed it once more, watching the arc cut against the light. By late afternoon, as he drove home, His radio buzzed with news commentary. Words like profiling and community trust slipped through the speakers, disembodied and safe. He switched stations, landing on a jazz track that filled the car like breath. When he reached the neighborhood, he saw something that made him slow. The bank parking lot cordoned off again. Cameras, reporters, a few employees lingering. And there, near the edge, Karen Blake stood in a raincoat, shoulders hunched, speaking to a reporter. Her face looked smaller without the arrogance of certainty. He pulled over across the street, not out of malice but curiosity. The wind carried snippets of her voice. "I just thought I was protecting someone. I realize now how wrong I was." The reporter nodded solemnly. Michael rolled up the window. Scout barked once, as if to punctuate the moment. "Come on," he said quietly. "We've got better places to be." At home, he found Evan sprawled on the couch, watching a superhero cartoon. The boy looked up and grinned. "Did you know heroes make mistakes too, Dad?" Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah, I know that." Evan turned back to the screen, unfazed, humming along to the theme. Outside, clouds broke into bands of gold. Michael stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the light spread over the quiet street. He thought of Karen's trembling apology, the officer's phone call, Bill's encouragement, all of it fragments of something larger. Maybe justice wasn't a hammer. Maybe it was water soft but unrelenting, shaping stone over time. He whispered it under his breath, tasting the words. Justice isn't always fair. But fairness begins when someone decides to do right anyway. Scout nudged his hand, tail thumping in agreement. Somewhere inside, the tension loosened. The world, imperfect as it was, still turned toward morning. By Monday morning, Atlanta had shaken off the rain. The city gleamed like something freshly forgiven, traffic pulsing through Peachtree Street with the rhythm of renewal. Michael arrived at the downtown branch of World City Bank at 9 sharp. A meeting confirmed the night before by Samuel Ortiz himself. Scout stayed home with Evan, who had insisted on feeding him pancakes, declaring that heroes both human and canine deserved proper breakfasts. Michael, in his pressed navy suit, looked every bit the executive he actually was, though the faint smudge beneath his left eye betrayed a sleepless night. As he stepped through the glass doors, the air inside hummed cold and sterile. Employees glanced up from their desks, whispers fluttered in his wake like paper scraps. The same marble floor where Karen had doubted him now gleamed under the weight of awkward civility. A receptionist smiled too brightly. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Ortiz is expecting you." "Thank you," Michael said, voice even. The conference room waited on the mezzanine, overlooking the lobby. Ortiz, a compact man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire frames, stood to greet him. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Michael nodded, setting his briefcase on the polished table. The city skyline stretched through the window behind Ortiz, sunlight washing the blinds in gold stripes. "You said you wanted to discuss outreach," Michael began. "Before we do, I want to be clear. I'm not here for a settlement, or to embarrass your bank. What happened has already done that." Ortiz inclined his head. "Understood. But you deserve an explanation. And perhaps an opportunity to shape what happens next." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed proposals, diversity training schedules, community workshops, public statements drafted by PR. "Corporate wants to issue an apology. But I thought we could do better. Something meaningful." Michael flipped through the pages, scanning the rehearsed remorse. "Words are cheap, Mr. Ortiz. What people remember is what changes." "Exactly." Ortiz leaned forward. "That's why I want your input. You run a respected foundation. If we sponsored a joint initiative, perhaps that bike registry program you mentioned, we could turn this into something bigger than a headline." The mention startled him. "You've been reading my proposals." Ortiz smiled faintly. "I did my homework." Silence stretched, filled by the soft hum of air conditioning. Michael studied the man's face, searching for sincerity. It was there, beneath the corporate polish, tired, genuine, the look of someone who'd seen enough storms to crave calm. "I'll consider it," Michael said. "But if we do this, it won't be window dressing. It'll mean uncomfortable conversations. Real ones." "I expect nothing less," Ortiz said. "And Karen?" The manager exhaled, shoulders sinking. "She's on administrative leave. HR will decide, but she's asked to speak with you privately, if you'll allow it." Michael hesitated. "To apologize?" "That, and more, I think. She's waiting downstairs." For a heartbeat he wanted to refuse, to let silence do the forgiving. But something deeper, Evan's voice maybe, that unbroken faith children carried tilted the scale. Send her in. Ortiz nodded, excused himself, and moments later, the door opened softly. Karen Blake stepped inside. Gone was the crisp confidence of the bank teller. She looked smaller now, pale under the fluorescent light, hair pulled back as if neatness might hold her together. In her hands she clutched a single envelope. "Mr. Carter," she began, voice trembling. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Michael said nothing, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat but couldn't meet his eyes. "I came to apologize," she said finally. "What I did was unforgivable. I thought I was helping. But I wasn't protecting anyone. I was protecting my fear." Her words came out halting, the practiced lines of someone who'd rehearsed in the mirror but found the script heavier when spoken aloud. "My parents raised me to trust my instincts. But somewhere along the way, my instincts got poisoned. I looked at you and saw danger, because I've been taught that story my whole life." She swallowed. "And when I saw your son, I thought. You thought I didn't belong." Michael finished quietly. "Yes," she whispered. "And when the truth came out, I wanted to disappear. But disappearing doesn't fix anything. So I want to help, if you'll let me." She slid the envelope toward him. Inside was a personal check, modest but sincere, made out to the Carter Foundation. "It's not penance," she said. "It's participation. I read about your registry program. If you'll take volunteers, I'll show up." Michael looked at her then, really looked. The woman before him was not the voice that had screamed for the police. She was the silence afterward, the uneasy, raw silence of someone learning too late what humanity costs. "You don't owe me money," he said. "You owe yourself better than this." Karen blinked hard. "I know. But maybe this is how I start." For a long moment, they sat in the fragile quiet between guilt and grace. Finally, Michael nodded. "Show up, then. Not for me, for the kids who'll never get the luxury of explaining themselves before someone judges them." She exhaled, the smallest relief softening her features. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "This isn't absolution. It's work." She stood, gathering her purse, pausing at the door. "I'll see you at the next meeting, Mr. Carter." "Michael," he corrected gently. She smiled, almost imperceptibly, and left. When the door clicked shut, Michael leaned back, staring at the envelope. Scout would have wagged his tail, he thought. Dogs forgave faster. But maybe people could learn. Later that afternoon, he drove to the community center on Edgewood Avenue, where Ortiz had arranged a press conference. Rows of folding chairs lined the gymnasium, reporters adjusting microphones, volunteers setting up bikes for donation. Bill from Pine Street Cycles was there, grinning, grease on his hands. "You really pulled it off, Mike," he said. "Half the neighborhood's talking." Michael shrugged. "Let's hope they're listening too." The event began. Ortiz spoke first, formal but heartfelt, about accountability, about unity. Then he handed the microphone to Michael. The crowd quieted. Michael looked out over the faces, parents, police officers, teenagers, city officials, and saw both skepticism and hope woven together. He cleared his throat. "A week ago, I was on the ground in a parking lot while someone swore I was a threat," he began. "And maybe in her eyes I was. But the truth isn't found in fear. It's found in what we choose to do after it." The room stilled. Cameras clicked. "Today isn't about shame," he continued. "It's about sight. About learning to see each other before deciding who we are." He gestured to the line of bikes gleaming behind him. "These bikes represent movement forward, together. They'll go to kids who deserve safety, joy, and the right to ride through their neighborhoods without being followed by doubt." Applause swelled, hesitant at first, then steady. At the back of the room, Karen stood near the doorway, clapping quietly, tears bright on her cheeks. When the event ended, people crowded around Michael, handshakes, congratulations, promises. Ortiz clasped his shoulder. "You turned this around." Michael smiled faintly. "It's not turned. Just started." As he stepped outside into the fading light, the street hummed with evening traffic. The air sharp with promise. Scout waited in the car, tail thumping against the seat. Michael opened the door, ruffling his fur. "Ready to go home, partner?" The dog barked once. Across the street, the sun dipped low, catching on a row of children riding new bikes, their laughter pealing through the dusk. The sound was pure, uncomplicated, the way hope should be. Michael stood for a moment, letting it wash over him. A reminder that even from misunderstanding, something better could grow. Then he smiled, started the engine, and drove toward home, where Evan would be waiting to ask, as always, how the day went and where he could finally answer, better than yesterday. The next month unfolded in the slow rhythm of recovery. Atlanta settled into the kind of autumn that painted the trees in rust and gold, the air crisp enough to carry laughter farther than it should go. On Saturdays, the park behind Glenwood Avenue buzzed with families' kids on shiny bikes, parents holding paper cups of coffee, dogs weaving through picnic blankets. The neighborhood bike registry had grown faster than Michael expected. Donations poured in after the community event. Some from local shops. Others from quiet strangers who'd watched the broadcast and felt something shift inside them. Each new name on the sign-up sheet was proof that even the smallest idea could take root if watered with sincerity. That morning, Michael stood by the registration booth, clipboard in hand, nodding greetings as volunteers moved in a cheerful rhythm. Scout lounged at his feet. His leash looped around a chair leg, golden fur glinting in the Sunday. Evan darted past on his bike, the wind flattening his Braves cap against his head. "Dad. Watch this," he shouted, launching off a small ramp Bill had built near the sidewalk. He landed with a triumphant wobble. "See that?" "I saw," Michael called back, smiling. "Try not to break anything before lunch." Evan laughed, circling the pond again. The hum of conversation wrapped around Michael like music, neighbors, trading stories, officers mingling with parents. The kind of easy coexistence that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Near the refreshments table stood Karen Blake. Sleeves rolled up, handing out bottled water to a group of kids. When she noticed him watching, she lifted a tentative hand in greeting. He returned the gesture. She'd shown up to every meeting since her apology, quiet, reliable, taking notes, cleaning up after others without prompting. She never asked for redemption, and maybe that was why she was earning it. "Everything's running smooth," Bill said, stepping up beside him with a clipboard of his own. "You sure you don't want to run for city council?" "One circus at a time," Michael said. "How's the donation count?" "Better than expected. Ortiz dropped off a check this morning. Bank sponsoring safety workshops for next spring. Guess they're serious." "They should be." Michael turned as Scout barked once, ears pricking toward a small commotion near the parking lot. A boy thin, maybe 13, was standing beside a bike with a twisted chain, frustration written all over him. Karen knelt next to him, showing him how to reset the link. The boy hesitated, hands trembling, then followed her instructions. Within minutes the chain clicked into place. His face lit up with pure, surprised joy. Karen laughed softly, brushing her hands on her jeans, and for a fleeting second, Michael saw the woman she could have always been if fear hadn't shaped her. Later, as the event wound down, the volunteers gathered for a group photo. Ortiz arrived just in time, slipping into the frame beside Karen. "Smile, Mr. Carter," the photographer said. "You've earned it." Michael obliged, though he never cared much for cameras. Still, when the shutter clicked, he felt something settle inside him, a chapter closing not with vengeance, but with completion. After cleanup, he and Evan walked Scout along the river trail. The air smelled of pine and barbecue smoke drifting from a nearby cookout. Evan rode ahead, circling back now and then to chatter about school, friends, and the comic book hero he'd recently decided to outgrow. "Dad, are you still mad at that lady from the bank?" he asked suddenly. Michael thought about the question. "No," he said finally. "Being mad's like holding a stone. It just weighs you down. I'd rather build something with it." "Like the bike thing?" "Exactly like that." Evan nodded thoughtfully, the kind of quiet understanding that made Michael's chest tighten with pride. "You think she's sorry?" "I think she's learning," Michael said. "And that's harder than saying sorry." Scout trotted between them, tail sweeping the dust, the picture of peace. They stopped at the bench overlooking the water, where golden leaves floated downstream like tiny promises. Michael sat, watching Evan skip stones. "You know, son," he said softly, "you can't choose the color you're born with, but you can always choose the kind of heart you have." Evan grinned without turning around. "That's what you said on TV." "Guess I did. It was cool. My teacher showed it to the whole class." "Did she?" "Yep, everybody clapped. Even the kids who never clap for anything." Michael laughed, shaking his head. "Remind me to send your teacher a thank you card." They sat in comfortable silence after that, broken only by Scout's rhythmic panting and the soft slap of stones skipping across the river's surface. A heron lifted off from the far bank, wings slicing the air in wide, deliberate strokes. The sun dipped lower, brushing the skyline in amber. Somewhere a church bell tolled the hour. Later that evening, back home, Michael stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of chili while Evan set the table. The house smelled of garlic and tomatoes. The kind of meal that said life had resumed its gentle normalcy. The television in the living room murmured with a local news segment footage from the day's event, smiling faces, bikes lined up in neat rows, a reporter's voice talking about community healing. The camera panned briefly to Michael shaking hands with Ortiz, then to Karen helping a child fasten a helmet. "You're famous again," Evan called from the table. "Not famous," Michael said. "Just visible. There's a difference." He turned off the stove and carried the pot over, Scout trailing behind, hopeful for scraps. They ate, trading small stories about their day, the kind that built a life in quiet layers. After dinner, Michael tucked Evan into bed. The boy yawned, half asleep already, clutching the dog's paw where Scout had curled beside him. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, kiddo. You think the world's better now?" The question lingered in the dark. Michael brushed a hand over his son's hair. "It's better tonight," he said. "That's a start." Downstairs, he poured himself a glass of water and stepped out onto the porch. The neighborhood was calm, porch lights glowing like watchful stars. Across the street, a new sign gleamed under the lamppost. Neighborhood Bike Registry sponsored by the Carter Foundation. He smiled, remembering how the idea had started as a single sentence in a late-night email. Now it was something solid, something that breathed beyond him. He sat on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, listening to the faint drone of crickets. Scout patted out, nudging his hand. "Yeah, buddy," Michael murmured. "We did all right." The breeze carried the scent of wet leaves, and for the first time in a long while, his mind was quiet. Inside the house, the clock ticked steadily toward another day, ordinary and full of promise. Michael looked up at the night sky, a scatter of faint stars struggling against the city's glow, and thought about fairness not as a thing that was given, but as a thing built. One patient act at a time. Somewhere down the street, laughter echoed, children riding home before curfew, bike tires whispering over pavement, freedom in motion. He closed his eyes and listened until the sound faded, then whispered the words that had become his compass. "Justice isn't fair, but fairness begins with the choice to see." Scout pressed closer, warm and loyal. The simplest proof that goodness, once chosen, always finds its way back.